Hey guys, it's Jordan El-Hag, President and Attorney for IBEW Local 1430. And today I want to talk to you about strikes because I know that's something a lot of people are concerned about. So we're going to be talking about whether a strike is likely to happen. I'm going to give you a framework on how you can evaluate all the information you'll be getting from the company and from us. We're going to talk about whether or not you even have to go on strike if you don't want to, understand the process of going on strikes, and we're going to talk about whether you even actually need to strike in order to get a contract. So I'm making this quick. Watch the whole thing, and I think it's going to answer a lot of questions. All right, so how can you guys evaluate this uncertain information? You're hearing information from Kmolmar, you're hearing information from me, and you probably don't know who to listen to. So I want to provide you with a way that you can process the information. See, now Kmolmar wants you to be confused. They want to provide you with information that's technically correct, but they're spinning it in a way that makes you uncertain and afraid. They don't sit there in a meeting with you and say, it's really likely that you're going to make a lot of money. They spin it, you've seen this, in a way that makes you feel like you're going to lose or something bad's going to happen. So we need to talk about the concept of possibility versus probability. The concept that almost anything is possible, but many things that are possible are unlikely to happen. And we have a couple of examples of how this comes up in our life, right? So the lottery is a good example of this. It's possible to win millions of dollars when you play the lotto, but the probability is that you're not going to win the money. Driving your car, it's possible to die in a car accident driving your car, but the probability is low. That's why we all drive cars, where we need to get what's the use out of the car, and we say, well, it's unlikely that I'm going to die driving. Same thing with medical procedures and medication. We take medicine to get better, even though there's a potential for death or side effects, because we say, well, I need what that can give me, and the risk of those things happening, dying from the medication, is very low. And we know that because the FDA has approved it and doctors prescribe it. So there are things that we can rely on to evaluate the information. So when we're looking at the information that's presented in these campaigns, do it the same way. Look at objective data. You don't have to listen to me. You don't have to listen to Kmolmar. There's data out there for you to make the decision for yourself, right? So the possibility versus the probability. And we're going to apply that here to strikes. All right, so the objective evidence says that strikes are unlikely to happen. Right, the United States government has a Bureau of Labor Statistics. They record all the data concerning labor. And in the past 10 years, there's only been 9.3 strikes per year in the United States private sector. Okay, there are millions of union members in the country. There are millions of companies that are union, and they don't go on strike, right? This is the data. There's been 93 work stoppages in the private sector. You are in the private sector in a 10-year period. Of that, there's only been 15 major strikes in a 10-year period in your industry. You work in manufacturing. So if the company is telling you strikes are possible, that's a true statement, but they're not telling you that they're probable. The likelihood of going on strike is extremely low. In my 20-year career, I've had 2 strikes, just 2 in 20 years. So it is highly uncommon for people to go on strike. Do you have to go on strike if you don't want to? No, right? You don't have to go on strike. No one's going to make you go on strike. The union can't make you go on strike. And if you stand back and think about it, how can anyone force you to not walk into work if there's a strike going on? Imagine in your mind how that looks like. There's Kmolmar, there's people standing outside of it, and with lines and a sign saying we're not going to work. What's going to actually physically stop you from just driving into work or walking into work and doing your job for the day? There's nothing. It's against the law for anyone to physically stop you from doing that. So you can go into work when there's a strike. There's no law that stops you from doing that. There's no consequence. People have been talking about fines or penalties. I don't know if that came from the company or just from incompetent people trying to draw their own conclusions, but there are no fines or penalties that IBW 1430 would impose on you if you chose not to go on strike. We honor, respect, and understand everybody's life circumstances. We are all in a different situation. You could be a single mother or a single father and, caring for a disabled child, deep in debt, and, going on strike is the last thing that you can afford to do. Or you could be a person who just fundamentally don't believe in that. We honor that. We look at the group of employees like you and say, you have the strength of the group as it is, and you guys have to democratically decide whether or not you want to go on strike. We don't decide that for you. You guys decide that, and we tell people when they're making that decision that if almost all the coworkers don't want to engage in a strike, you're going to lose, and don't do it. We discourage people from going on strikes. So don't feel like there's a consequence to not going on strike, because that's not true. And it's your individual decision. The union doesn't decide. IBW Local 1430 does not decide if you go on strike or not. The way that this works is when the contract negotiation is done, the contract is presented to you guys, and you vote to either accept it, reject it, or vote to have no union. And you could also vote to go on strike, right? So it's accept it, reject it, and go on strike, or vote to have no union. And if you vote to go on strike, it has to be a majority vote, and then we talk to everybody and say, listen, it's a majority vote, but you don't have to go on strike if you don't want to. Like if there's 300 people there and 160 people voted to go on strike, well, there's 140 people that don't want to go on strike, and we're going to tell those people who want to go on strike, listen, you're going to lose. Half of the place doesn't want to go on strike. They're not going to go stand on the street. They're going to go into work. You don't have the strength to do that. And you're going to have to make decisions based on that. So you are individually in control over your future and the decision in that respect. Don't feel like the union can force you to do anything, or IBW 1430, or anyone can force you to do something you don't want to do, because that's not how it works. So that begs the question, right? If we don't go on strike and the company knows we don't want to go on strike, how can we get a good contract? Don't we have to go on strike in order to get a contract? The answer is no. You don't have to go on strike. I've been involved in 2 strikes in 20 years, and in every single contract negotiation that we've done, people have been progressing forward. During the pandemic, we're negotiating contracts right now, and people are still getting their all their health care paid for by the company, and we get that extended for multiple years after that. They're getting very significant wage rate increases during negotiations, and we're doing that because companies don't want to go on strike or have to deal with a strike, and they pay money to avoid that. So one of the ways you can analyze this statement that I'm making is by looking at the data. So if there are millions of union members in the country, this is a fact, no one can dispute that, and there's only been about 100 major strikes in the United States in the last 10 years, and union members make more money than non-union members. This is a fact. This is a Department of Labor fact. They can't dispute that. Then there have been millions of union members that get more money and better benefits without going on strike. So millions of union members have secured better wages and working conditions than non-union people, and they've done this without going on strike. So if you think having to go on strike is necessary to get a contract, it's just simply wrong. And you can ask this guy from Kmolmar who's talking to you, do people get wage increases in collective bargaining without going on strike? He'll lie to you if he tells you anything but yeah. So don't think you need to go on strike to get a contract. Some of the other ways we can apply pressure, there's so many different ways. We can embarrass the company. We can talk to vendors. We can talk to customers. We can put out public information campaigns. There's tons of stuff that we can do in order to get the company to give you better working conditions. And they want to avoid that. So don't think it's that you have to go and walk out and risk your job in order to get a better contract. So continuing on that topic, Kmolmar is as afraid of having a strike as you are, and that's why you can get better wages and benefits without having a strike. You guys know this in the back of your mind already. There are people who've been posting in the Facebook group saying, oh, if there's a strike, Kmolmar can lose customers, or the quality of the product will drop down, and they're not going to be able to make sales. All of this is true. And a company doesn't want to incur that kind of loss, which is why they're willing to pay more money to avoid having a work stoppage. It's the same thing as why you guys, when you negotiate, wouldn't be dead set on pushing the envelope, 100%, and you'd be willing to compromise because you would say, well, I'm getting this much more. Is it really worth going on strike? And you strike this balance to find the happy medium that everybody can live with. But Kmolmar doesn't want to strike, and you can go ask them that, right? Go ask them, do you want to have a strike? And what they're going to tell you is absolutely not. We want a good relationship with you, but if there was a strike, we would do whatever it takes to win that. But that doesn't mean that they're not going to suffer a lot of harm as a result of the strike. You guys have been there a long time. You know what they're doing. It's not like, anyone off the street could just come in and do your job, right? It's not easy. And they have to find quality people. You have value. So they don't want to go through that. You guys are so concerned about strikes when they're unlikely to happen, but you're also afraid of them in the sense that you feel like there's a bad outcome as a result of that. You're talking as if you're powerless and afraid of the company, and you don't need to feel that way. You have power if you're unified. If you're separated the way you are now, you have none, right? The company will do whatever it wants to do, and you just have to accept it. So don't feel powerless. Don't be afraid of the concept of strikes, because we just went through it, and you don't need them to get a good contract. They're unlikely to happen, and nobody wants them. The union doesn't want them, you don't want them, and the company doesn't want them. And I'm saying that in a video, knowing Kmolmar is going to see it, and I'm still telling you you're going to get a good contract if you don't strike. So, I gave you a starting point to do some research. I hope it's helpful, and we're going to put out another video really soon. Hopefully it answers a lot of questions that you're having.